Good morning, everyone. How's it going? So I'm going to be covering quite a bit today. We are going to talk about narrative painting today. It's a really broad range of paintings. I have one behind me. I'm going to show you in a minute. And there's so many artists, so much sculpture, installation out there that falls into the category of narrative painting. So I figured we'd just wait a couple minutes to see if anyone else joins us today. In the meantime, what you might do to prepare, hey Lisa, great to see you. What you might do to prepare for today's lesson is just start culling some photographs. Look through your photographs. They could be on your phone. I have an iPad. Today I'm going to work with, hey Sarah, yay. And maybe just start looking for pictures that grab your attention for whatever reason. And just start a little collection of those photos. You may have come here today already with an idea in mind, which is great. But I'm going to take you through my process, and maybe that will shift something for you, maybe not. And we're also going to look at some examples of narrative paintings because it's such a huge category of painting, such a broad range of painting. So we'll take a little time to look at some artists that do narrative painting as well. So in the meantime, I'm going to just finish getting set up here with my paints. I'm not sure how far we will get along in the painting process today, but I'm just going to add a couple paints and just see if anyone else shows up today. But I hope y'all are doing well, enjoying the summer. So as I talk about narrative art, I'm going to be sharing some links to examples of paintings and stuff. Hi, Beth. Thanks for joining us today. So basically narrative art. Hi, Paulette. Good morning. Glad to see you. Okay, so narrative art is really any art that tells a story. And so this is a huge range, not just of mediums, but also of subject matter, obviously. And there's also a lot of interpretation as to what narrative art is. We're going to look at different examples of things just to show you the range. So if you can think, I think a lot of you probably know who Norman Rockwell is and his illustrations. That is a great example. He's a great example of like the quintessential narrative art. I would maybe call him more of an illustrator, but that's another discussion. But he, you know, his drawings and his paintings illustrated a scene, a situation, a setting, a moment, and they were very humorous often. And then, you know, you can also think of Italian Renaissance art or art that depicts biblical scenes or mythological scenes, what we would refer to as more classical European art, that narrated and depicted a situation. In my mind, and I don't know if this is an art school thing or what, but in my mind, I kind of break down European art into pre-photography and after photography, because I feel like photography really allowed artists to start superimposing photographs together. In the early days of photography, people could take their cameras inside and start doing more candid, kind of weird tableau photography, setting up scenes and situations. And then that really influenced how painters worked thereafter. So that's how I tend to break down art in my mind, is like pre-photography, after photography. Hi, Joanne. Good morning. But, some people would say modern art, postmodern, classical art, etc. Other things you might think about, like with narrative art, it can take the form of sculpture. If you think of the Iwo Jima sculpture, here, I'll share this with y'all. I wish I could share it on my screen, but I can't. Ooh, it's a really big link. But did that share? I didn't share. But you'll know the Iwo Jima sculpture of the soldiers planting the flag. It's a very, there's a lot of action there, and a story is being told. I'll try to share this link again. Great, not sharing. I was also thinking about installation art and how installation art can tell a story. There's an artist named Marisol Escobar. Okay, let's see if this link shares. Hey, and she would make these wonderful sculptures out of wood of people and place them into situations. So that's an example of a more narrative installation. Let's see. There is a whole genre of art that's called psychological landscape, which I would place into narrative art. I'm going to share this image by an artist I know named Anna Jensen. And she talks about how all her work is psychological landscape. It's kind of a landscape of the subconsciousness. Even, we might even think of some of Dali's paintings of his dreams and subconscious, the melting watches and all of that, as being narrative painting. I also think that narrative painting can evoke a certain feeling. Here, I'm just going to share one more artist who calls her drawings narrative landscapes also, which I really love that idea. But I also think that narrative paintings might also just evoke a feeling using images that we can recognize. So, for example, when we did the abstract assignment with photographs, a lot of the pieces that were turned in, I would consider narrative, because there were subjects that one could maybe look at and derive their own story from. So a narrative painting doesn't have to be like an obvious story that's being told. It could be open for interpretation. Even sometimes a still life can be a narrative painting. Wanted to share this painting by a, a student, someone who sometimes participates in these videos. Um, and to me, like, I see a very clear story being told here, and a feeling being evoked through this piece. But you might look at some of the other paintings these are the paintings that people gave me for the photo reference artwork. And yeah, lots of really strong stories actually that can be derived from those images. And myself personally, I often, consider a lot of my work landscape, and certainly my early work when I was first working as a painter. Alana, you were so funny. When I was first working as a painter, all of my paintings I called narrative paintings. I'm going to show you this painting behind me that I recently unearthed. I had completely forgotten about it. I made this a few years ago. But when I was first working, like in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was really interested in using photographs, but this was before the internet. So I would go into libraries and I would just like go through the shelves and just try to find books and magazines and things with interesting images. And often the way my narrative paintings began was just looking at a few images and finding pictures that to me were interesting together. So like maybe it would be a building and a bunch of dogs and people with shopping carts or something. Um, yeah, it just I didn't have a plan of creating a distinct story necessarily, but more just putting images together and just seeing what would come out of it. So that might be a way that you approach your narrative painting today. Another thing I want to say about narrative paintings is that it's really a place where people can work out fantasies, fears, um, nightmares. I mean, I don't, when I was kind of digging for some references to show y'all, there's a lot of really graphic and really intense narrative painting out there in the world that I just thought for trigger warning effect I wouldn't share here. But yeah, there's some really intense work out there. And I think it's a really good place for people to work out whatever is, sticking in them. There might be an image that just keeps coming up that you feel like you need to get out. And don't be scared of that stuff. Just go towards it and get it out, because I think like if you can get it out, it's a little better. And it doesn't mean that you're, when you see painting, this frequently happens because I have a lot of friends that make really graphic painting and they're frequently accused of having like issues or whatever. But I just think it's a really healthy way to work through some of that stuff. So I just want to put that out there. As you're working today in your studio, allow yourself to go through that if you have to. I'm going to just share one more cute little narrative here. Who hasn't felt like that person, in a conversation or a group meeting. So I really like this little situation here. This artist's name is Bradley Biancardi. So yeah, okay. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to talk about before we can get into sort of developing our paintings. If anyone has a question, let me know. So the way, I'm going to tell you again, like the way that I would start paintings, this painting down here, this pink one with the owl, I don't know if you can see it, but that's actually one that I made during that era of not having access to the internet for images. And, I think I found the picture of the bombed out building in a book and these pictures of kids playing and then other picture of a owl with the mouse in its beak. So I think this is a combination of one, two, three, four, five images. Um, and in this situation, I put them into an environment, but you don't necessarily have to do that. So one thing I would recommend is like look through your pictures. And today I actually used to keep a folder of images to just kind of draw from that were interesting to me. And today I just started pulling out pictures of things that caught my eye, friends from back in the day. Y'all remember 5 Points, the way it used to be? A dog park. Since I found that image the other day from years ago, or that painting, I found this image and I thought, well, I kind of like this nighttime thing. So I think I'm actually going to work with this image as sort of my jumping off point. I'm going to try doing a nighttime scene. But you might have a different picture. Something like this picture of these people in a dog park, like this is ripe with opportunities. You could just paint this, or you could paint this with like a monster coming over or like a parade of cats coming through. I mean, if you just start with your environment, you can add elements to it. I want to show you, there's a really wonderful little painting by Mary Cassatt. You probably all are familiar with her. I can't find it now. But her paintings are really lovely, little simple narratives. So you don't have to necessarily compile a ton of images together. It's up to you. You might just find one simple situation to work from. And sorry, I don't have that picture pulled up right now. This guy I wanted to show, Greg Burrock, who I discovered yesterday. It has these funny little, very simple landscapes, or I'm sorry, narrative paintings that are just, they're very edited down. So your picture doesn't have to contain multitudes. It can be edited as well. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to show you before we get going. Actually, I do want to show this one. This is a painting I saw when I went to the National Portrait Gallery. And now I'm forgetting the name of the guy that made it. But I love it because it's telling two stories. It's telling the story of this woman, I think it's called Alma Sewing. So it's telling the story of the seamstress in her workspace sewing, but then also the artist made his portrait up there in the light. So it's telling a few stories. We're also seeing the story of him making the painting. So I like that too. But yeah, your narratives today could be very obvious like that, like telling a very distinct story, or more open-ended, more open for the viewer to interpret. Okay, so let's say you grabbed a few images. I'm going to start with this one. Back in the day, I used to just start painting and let the painting evolve. That's my process. But if you feel more comfortable sketching your composition out, that's a great idea. And we're going to do that today just to make it a little less, I don't know, make it a little more fun. This way you can try out different ideas. So one thing to think about, like, let's say if I'm going to make the painting on a canvas like this, think about, I mean, this is not square. Think about how it's going to be different if you have it horizontal as opposed to vertical. That's going to really change the story of your painting. Another thing that's really going to change the story of your painting is how you place your elements. For example, we tend to read a painting left to right. If I was working with this image, this campfire image, you know, how would it be different if I placed, I'm going to just be really loose here so you can see. This is the fire. These are the people sitting around it. How would it be different if I placed, this is my canvas, and I placed them small here in the middle, and then in the foreground did something like this piece behind me where I put like a ton of rabbits. Like, that's going to be an entirely different painting. And maybe there's a landscape back here. That's going to be an entirely different painting than if I had it this way, and maybe our main person is cut off a bit, and there's more emphasis on this fire and these people. And then maybe, let's say I want to put a bat in it because it's nighttime. If I place the bat, I mean, think about where you're going to place these things and how it's going to be different. Like, the story will be slightly different. And it might not be something that you can describe with words, but it just might be a feeling that the viewer gets. If I made the bat like really large here in the foreground, that's going to be a lot different than if I made it like tiny back here. Or if I made it just going off the edge, or just coming in from the side here. A really cool device might be that you make it huge up in the foreground and there's a few bats flying off the page. So placement of your elements is really important, and how they relate to each other. And I kind of like when there's an awkwardness sometimes to the way something is placed or arranged. Like sometimes things might be on different pictorial planes. So yeah, and then let's say this is my canvas. Oops. And let's say I follow maybe the framing of the photograph a little bit closer, and I do put her in the foreground. And the fire here. And other people kind of around the fire. So before I came on here today, I also looked up nighttime images to see, like, maybe I will put other elements into this picture. So for example, you know, I found this like picture of a fox at night, or, you know, another one. It was an article about animals being forced to go nocturnal. Kitty cat, kids running at night. So I tried to find something that had similar light. And just this image of these kids running, I mean, that's so there's something really compelling about just this to me. And maybe I would put that in the background or something, or make them running through the front of the scene. I don't know. But that's the thing, when you start digging for images, you might just find things that are really evocative to you for whatever reason. I painted a lot of dogs for a long time, even though I'm more of a cat person, but I was really into painting dogs for a long time. Here's another nighttime scene, just a tent. Like maybe this is something that I incorporate in the background of this painting. Another really awesome thing to do, it's very advanced, but it's super fun, is to make a little maquette. So work from life. Try staging a little scene that then you paint. And I certainly know artists that will go to very great lengths to do that. I don't have my friend Margaret Curtis. She recently made a painting with an ice sculpture in it, and she actually made an ice sculpture to work from the reflections. So there's all kinds of really interesting, just staging it and figuring out how you're going to make the painting is itself a really interesting device to use here. So I have these pine cones, and I was like, well, what if I played with scale and made, instead of trees, like giant pine cones in my painting that were bigger than the people. That's always something fun to play with, scale. This is what's great about art and painting, is you can do whatever you want. My little clay sculptures from my friend Betsy, like maybe they will make an appearance in this painting also. So you could also think about combining things from life and photographs. So how's everyone doing? If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. I know this is a lot. What I like to do, what I tell people, just get some images that are interesting to you and just start there. What's the most interesting one? What's the one that's grabbing you the most? And for me, it is this little campfire scene. But I think I am going to, don't underestimate canvas direction. It is really important, I think, to a painting and to telling your story. So I'm going to work this way, I think. And I think I would like to actually put a little landscape from my camping scene in here. So I am going to start with my photograph of this tent, this lit up tent. I really find it really interesting, the light. Maybe I'll do a video of painting nighttime scenes. I don't have a lot of experience with it, but you can't really see that. Yeah, so I'm just going to start with lightly placing things. And if you don't love where the elements are going or how it's turning out, you can always paint over things. Okay. I do know people that will lay everything out and stage everything in Photoshop beforehand. I have tried that. Unfortunately, my Photoshop skills aren't the best, so I haven't really done that too much. Of course, I really like the idea of some kind of creature prowling around because that's always I'm always feeling like there's creatures, ghosts and goblins when I'm camping. But actually, I think I want to try doing a pine cone, like a big, weird pine cone here. Let's see. Here. Okay. This cat. So, I hope this isn't too disturbing for people, but I have this cat with a little creature in its mouth. At first, I thought it was a kitten that it was carrying around, but it's not. But if I put the cat in the foreground here, looking at me, that's going to tell a different story than if I reversed it and put it on this side. So it's walking into the painting. It's just a slightly different feeling. And I'm not sure which one I would prefer. I think I'm going to do it reversed. So it's coming into the painting. And, there's a lot of different tools you can use on your uh, devices. So with this one, I could just switch it like that little thing up there. This is so much easier than back in the day, but it's not. I know, I didn't even talk about this whole idea of using images. I think a lot of people have reservations about using other people's images in their paintings. Um, there are laws around, like, usage laws around how much you alter the image. Um, Me placing this cat into this painting is completely recontextualizing it. So I'm not going to worry about whoever took this on their camera, their night camera, their trap camera. I'm not going to worry about them coming after me, but I don't know. Maybe they'll see this video and come after me. In which case, the worst thing that will happen if something like I've never heard of it happening to anyone I know. I've only heard the opposite, where large businesses have taken ideas from people. That's the only thing I've heard. I've never heard of like an artist stealing someone's photograph and I don't know, getting sued for it. Unless they're famous and we're doing it intentionally. So I've got my little cat there in the foreground. I just messed something up. Okay. I'm going to put some raccoons here. You can also make up creatures. You can make up things. The artist I had shared on the screen saver, Peter Bruegel, the Elder. If you look at some of his work, there are some little demons in there that I could never have dreamed up on my own, but somehow he did. So I've got a really loaded painting at this point, or composition, and I'm not sure what's going to make it to the end and what's going to get painted out. But just kind of started to place things here. I may or may not keep all of this in here. Okay. How are all of you doing? So what I'm going to do, back in the day, I always started with the alizarin crimson. I don't know why. I love this color. And that would be my underpainting, was with alizarin crimson. So for the sake of old times, for old time's sake, I am going to go ahead and start just placing in my composition here, the different elements with acrylic, or I'm sorry, with alizarin crimson. So I am discovering that this canvas has that coating on it. It's making it difficult for the paint, but Do you also do watercolor? I do a little bit. Um, Quite honestly, not so much. Mostly, if I do anything like that, it's more gouache. But I do like to paint on paper. And in fact, I'm discovering, everyone, that this canvas is, I think it's coated for an oil-based paint. And I have to say, it's not good to paint with acrylic on top of that. So I just got out some oil. I'm going to paint with oil right now. But you continue to do acrylic or watercolor. Okay. Today's lesson isn't so much about the material you're using. You can use any material. It's more about laying it out and getting there and getting to, I don't know, getting inspired. Okay, let's see here. Let's see if this works. But not that. I've started to do watercolor as well. That's good. Okay, so I have my pine cones here. So I'm gonna come in here and start just placing in. Yeah, this oil paint is grabbing to the canvas a lot better. Okay. I find that sometimes my materials tell me what they want. Um, like today, my canvas said, no, you're going to be painting with oils today. Maybe it's like, I haven't painted with oils in weeks. So maybe the canvas was just like, you got to do this today. I've kind of been avoiding it, painting with oils. It's a little fussier. How's everyone doing out there? Are you all working on something? I'd love to see if you are, or love to hear about what you're doing. Alana. Started with the barn scene, changing the season from winter to spring and adding kids with kites, hopefully. That would be awesome. That sounds really cool, Lisa. So I'm just blocking in my subject, blocking in my lights and darks here, and just using the alizarin crimson for now. And I will be going over it, of course, with other colors. If any of you have a favorite narrative painting that you've seen, that you love, let me know. You could leave it a link in the comments even, or just the title and the author's name in the comments. I'd love to know what you like. Joanne. Yes, I'm painting a monochromatic underpainting, and then I'm going to be layering colors on top of it. But I will probably be signing off before I get around to doing that. I have a lot of videos on my channel that demonstrate this technique. So now I'm taking a darker color and I'm starting to block in some of the darker areas. But you also could be doing some mixed media. If you're working with a water-based paint, you could be also using some collage um, elements in your piece. I don't like to use that with oils because the oil tends to rot away the paper. So since oils dry a lot slower, what I'm gonna need to do is wait a while before I start laying color on top of this. If I just started putting color right on top, it's all gonna turn to what's called mud. So I need to wait for this to set up before I can actually start putting color on top. Alana, I used to do watercolor. I want to try again. It is totally different. Oh, I thanks for the request. I really don't like to just reproduce another painting, um, but I'll take it into consideration. Okay, so again, I'll try to post some process shots as I continue with this, maybe on my blog or elsewhere, but I hope that at least this lesson has introduced you to the concept of narrative art, narrative painting, psychological landscapes, and that you have started to begin this process of superimposing images together um, within some kind of environment to make a landscape, or I'm sorry, a narrative work of art on some level. If you want more information, more artist links, feel free to contact me. All right, and next week we will be doing icon paintings. So I will be sending out a link for the stream. This is exciting. There's also like the way that you paint really tells the story too, like the brush strokes, the puddling of the paint, the, if there's really intense brushwork that might add a certain level of tension to the piece, or if it's all blended out, that's going to also contribute to the mood of the piece and the story in the piece. So think about those things too, the way you paint it, your color palette, how that's going to evoke a feeling or a mood in your painting. Would you use bright, intense colors or somber, subdued colors? So this is looking a little messy. I will post progress shots of this on my blog so you can see how it progresses. Maybe you'll notice elements taken away by the time it's done, or elements added to it by the time it's done. My paintings tend to change a lot as I go, the compositions of them. So we'll see. I don't know where it's going to evolve. All right, I am going to sign off for now, and I hope you all have a really great week. And please send me whatever you do. I would love to see whatever it is you make. If you like this video, please give a thumbs up, and I will be in touch and hopefully see you next week. All right, have fun, everyone. Bye.